right. Thanks for having me today. I'm excited to share a lot of the things that I've witnessed as I've worked in this space for the last 13 years. So a little bit about me. I've been in the industry for a lot longer, but in the last 13 years, I've spent time at three virtual worlds products. So the first is IMVU, where I was a VP of product. That platform was originally an early 2000s virtual world, came out around the same time as Second Life, really focused on avatar socialization and customization. Roblox, I think most people know what it is. I started as the head of design there. Over the years, I ran groups like Avatar, Social, and eventually left as the head of music brands and education. And then I'm currently at Rec Room, where I am the head of the creator organization. So when I think about the type of society we want to build virtually, there's of course a lot of real world inspiration at our fingertips. And so as we walk through this presentation, something to think about are Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the 5 pillars of society. Most of these actually directly map to kind of core principles that we would use to design a great social experience. All right, so when you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the first one is the physiological needs: food, water, shelter, things like that. Obviously, you don't need those things in a virtual existence. So instead, I think about kind of foundationally, the ability to communicate with one another is core to being able to have a great existence. And so I want to talk about what I think that means. We want to create something that is synchronous and social. It should work like the real world. It should work like this room that we're in today. I can walk up to somebody and begin talking to them with no friction. So in Rec Room in particular, I think we've done a pretty good job with that social interaction. So we've removed a lot of barriers by making sure that your mic is on by default and that your avatars are able to convey really kind of complex emotions. One of the great things about VR is that you're capturing emotional intent, the way people hold themselves, all of this kind of social cues, or at least an approximation thereof, that you would need to have a great conversation and meaningful connection with one another. So I think that's really core. Free will is really, really important in these platforms. And so I like to think about this as agency and autonomy. You have to give your players the ability to act and to instigate change and to make a difference in the world that they're inhabiting. And I can talk a little bit more about what that means in a second. Autonomy is the ability to make choices on your own without external influence. And so I think the way that this translates is really an open-ended experience, and this is where these UGC platforms really shine. It's not so much about creating the best game that you can visit, but rather really core social mechanics that allow you to effectively create your own narrative and live that with other players. So again, thinking about this is difficult as a designer, right? You want to create this like highly edited and great polished experience. But when you really cede control over to the players, that can all go out the window, and you have to be comfortable with that. So it took me a long time to really be able to embrace that and all the craziness that comes along with it. But yeah, once you give players control over their experiences, all sorts of wonderful things happen that really translate into great engagement because there's an element of surprise, right? Like the more you're able to predict what can happen, the more you'll burn out on that experience. But when you're dealing with these types of platforms, the actions and reactions of your fellow players are totally unpredictable, which brings that element of kind of freshness and surprise every time you play. I think the other thing is it's easy sometimes when we're designing interactive experiences to imagine the player as an audience member. We always want to be encouraging participation rather than passive observation. So at Roblox, I worked on the first big virtual concert there. It was a Lil Nas X concert, and one of the things that we wanted to do to try to make it feel more authentic to the Roblox platform was give players a sense of agency and autonomy. Even though a lot of the performance had been pre-recorded, the environments, the effects, and the actions of the players were all under your control. So if nobody was moving around, nobody was clapping or jumping up and down, the environment was pretty static. If people were excited, jumping up and down, making movement, the lighting effects would change, the environment would kind of crumble, et cetera. So it really feels like you have an active part to play in that narrative. And that made sure that every instance of that experience was different for the people in it. And that's really, really important. So the last thing I think that you need to consider when we want to create meaningful experiences is emotional stakes. Ultimately, you want to feel like the people you're engaging with are real on the other end. And so ultimately, this sort of sums up to a capacity for empathy. And this becomes really important when you think about the fabric of society, which we'll get into in a little bit. But another way to kind of imagine this is that we're creating a memory machine. That all of the experiences, all of the encounters that your players are having with one another are generating memories that are as powerful as real world. One example I can give, again, at Roblox was deep in the middle of the pandemic. We really wanted to have a holiday party, couldn't do it. We built an experience from the ground up that had a bar that actually resembled the ones that we had hung out in the past. Lots of people came together. You could pick up drinks, you could drink them. Voice chat was on. I have visceral memories of the conversations that I had, of the interactions I had with those people. They are burned indelibly in my memory as if they are real. And I think all of that is possible because you've got this kind of strong emotional response that's tied to all of this. So we want to make sure that there are real emotional stakes at play. So now as we start to move into kind of the societal fabric of things, we think about culture and consequence. And another way to think about this is, what are the rules of your society and how do you enforce them? Rec Room does a really good job of this, and nobody is perfect, and the space is really hard. But in Rec Room, when you onboard into the product space, you are immediately greeted with a friendly voice, and you're kind of led to understand the rules of engagement on the platform, that we expect you to be kind to one another, that you should be doing your Rec Room best. It sets a really positive tone right off the bat, and you'll see kind of signage plastered in the dorm room and in the rec center, which is sort of the open social lobby, as you navigate that reinforce those ideals. But sometimes it's not good enough to say like, hey, we expect you to act well. You definitely need to moderate the content as well. So we've got a full-time, pretty large moderation staff. And the reason all of this is important is ultimately, like as product creators, developers, owners, toxicity equals churn. Like if you have a bad experience, you're not going to want to come back. So we really make sure that trust and safety elements are at the core of the design of all of our feature sets. So whether that's the actual physical space that you're in, making sure that it's hard to be cornered, that you or the UX where you have easy access to an ability to escape the situation you're in and return to a safe space like your dorm room. Those are critical to ensuring that sense of safety. And then lastly here, I think at the end of the day, it's pretty difficult to scale, what I would call the stick side of this, which is kind of enforcing when the rules have been broken. That looks like moderation, obviously. The real way to address this is to get at kind of root causes and rely on the community to hold each other accountable. And I think, again, Rec Room does a pretty good job of this. We've actually got, on the positive side of things, many players who have been on the platform for a long time and have taken it upon themselves to become teachers. They hold classes and events and help people understand how to build things, as well as just how to navigate and operate and succeed on the platform. So that's a really positive way to look at it. The other flip side of that is that we, again, allow people to report malbehavior and content that might be objectionable. So the thing that all three of the platforms that I've worked on have in common is they're open UGC kind of 3D immersive environments. And UGC is really, really important for the evolution of these types of platforms. Ultimately, it's hard to design kind of the future forever. But if you kick a lot of that over to your users, to your players, they will always surprise you with where they take the product. And so when we think about UGC in general, it's not just a way to kind of create fun skins or even full-blown games. It's actually a tool for social and economic mobility. So when you look at the trajectory and arc of a creator on a platform like Roblox or Rec Room, oftentimes the intrinsic motivation is not to get rich. It's I love to build, I love to make, and I want to share those creations with people like me. And that is often a state that people are in for many years as they're developing those core skills. At some point, some people may find it attractive to attempt to make money, make a living with what they're doing, and some succeed there. But effectively, we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to have the social mobility and the economic mobility that they deserve. And so we do that by making sure that everyone has access to the tools of creation. And again, Rec Room does a great job here in that you can use the device you have to create anything, whether it's a 3D object all the way to a full-blown experience. So you could theoretically create that with your low-end Android device all the way up to your VR headset. That makes sure everybody, again, can play equally. And the other part of this is the social reward is really important. Being able to share that, being featured on a list, having other players comment on how much they love what you're doing, that actually is its own reward by itself. And then lastly, for those who are really generating a ton of playtime on the platform or have great monetization loops, you see people making livings on these platforms. On Roblox, it's more commonplace. They have a very large player base. But even on Rec Room, a good percentage of our creator base are making a living wage on the platform doing the thing that they love, and that's really incredible. So again, with Rec Room, we're really pushing to have all of our players at least have the capability, the possibility of becoming a creator. And right now, one of the more interesting stats in that direction is that 20% of our daily active users are using our creative tools. So that's very high for these types of platforms. Community empowerment is really important. I mean, at the end of the day, these things are nothing without the community. And so you've got to find as many ways as possible to engage and collaborate with that community. And one of the things that we try to do a good job of at Rec Room is be completely transparent with them about what we're working on, why we're working on it. Even when we screw up, we're pretty transparent on all the channels that matter. So Discord, YouTube, and Reddit. We also invite our players to actively participate in open betas. This is like a common place occurrence on the platform, so we do a good amount of messaging to let them know, hey, this feature might not be fully baked, but we really want your feedback. We want to work together to make this thing great. And we also hold open feedback sessions, whether that's playthroughs, watching how players are interacting with the features, or just open kind of AMAs where they can request features or tell us how much they hate whatever's going on at the moment. All that is really important to create that two-way dialogue and interaction between the players and the community and the company. And most of the product advancements development on the platform have actually come directly from our players telling us what they want and need. Yeah. So that is a really high-level overview, and we've got another 8 or so minutes open for questions if anybody has any, or just an open dialogue. I love to talk about this stuff. Like I said, Rec Room has been around for 8 years. It actually started life as just a game with social elements. It evolved into what it is today, which is an open UGC platform. Roblox has been around for, I think, 18 years. Was always open UGC, very interesting. The same with IMVU, started life as an open UGC platform for avatar creation. Yeah. Thanks for giving me your time. Would love to chat with anybody.
Yeah, thank you very much, Morgan. Thank you. Question?
I'm wondering, in terms of your partnerships with brands, if you can share any challenges and learnings, that would be great. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. That's a good question. So, brands and UGC don't always mix. And I think this is becoming less true over time as brands become more comfortable with working in this space. But again, a brand is generally speaking a really highly curated image of the values that the company is trying to convey. So that is obviously at risk if you are giving that over to your player base, your creator base to remix and do whatever they may with it. I would say in the early days of having brands come onto the Roblox platform, it was very experimental. Most were not willing to kind of open themselves up to this remixable state. I think, though, what they've seen is, or what we've all seen, is if you do not authentically engage the player base, there will be tissue rejection. So we saw a lot of high-end brands try to activate on Roblox and basically create little mini games that looked like they were targeted at younger players, and the players rejected it wholesale. So you really have to tap into the community lore, the community expectations, and actually probably the best cheat code that one can have here is employ members of the community. So many of the brands that I've worked with, we kind of suggested pairing them up with creators who are already doing great things on the platform, who may have similar ethos or aesthetics that would be complementary. And those types of collaborations with the community creators are generally embraced by players because it is authentically part of the platform. So we've seen a lot of success with things like that.
Okay, thank you. Next. Yeah, who was first?
Thank you. Hi, thank you for your talks. Really great. I have a question. How long do you think it's going to be before Rec Room has experiences for AR platforms?
So, great question. Very passionate about getting us there. We actually had an experimental build on iOS years ago. So this is a thing that we're working towards. We look at AR as just another room, another space that you can visit, and we have the capability of doing so. I think we're looking for the right platform to engage with there. But what I can say is we definitely did a lot of work with Apple and the Apple Vision Pro before it launched, looking for the right time to kind of engage further. But definitely on our radar, and you'll probably see something in the near future.
Thank you.
So speaking more to maybe the innovator's dilemma of community management, where the community you started with may not become the community that you grow towards. Yep. Maybe could you speak a little bit about Roblox or Rec Room's philosophy of how you're going to take it into the future and get that new future audience versus maybe pandering to the original audience?
it's a really tough balancing act. I think Rec Room is going through a transition right now. I think Roblox is as well, but it's a little bit more further progressed in its lifespan. So Rec Room, I would say like the old school players who have been there since the very beginning feel frustrated with a lot of the changes, a lot of the movement away from what a first party content being the predominant mode of engagement. I think the best thing that we've been doing is we've been cranking up the volume and the consistency around communication there. What we find is, just like any other person in the world, like in the absence of information, people create their own narrative, and it's usually negative if it's floating around Reddit. So to combat that, you got to get ahead of it and be very clear about what you're doing and why and how it benefits them. But honestly, I look at all of the negative critique and feedback as an opportunity. There are generally nuggets of truth in there that we should be pulling out. So when I hear them say, hey, we missed this thing that actually nobody was playing, but it felt big to them, I look at that as an opportunity to find a better way to deliver on the promise of that feature that we could no longer, kind of support at scale and integrate it back into the system. And I think you see, Roblox sort of had moved away from running community events, and now they're kind of moving back towards it because it is, it's appeals to that core player base on the platform that's still there, even as they try to age up. So I guess that's not a very specific answer, but I think you've got to embrace what you were as you move forward, and try not to lose sight of who got you there to begin with.
Thank you. I think we have 3 minutes. Any other questions?
So as platforms like, grant me the premise that many of the platforms like Rec Room and Roblox and the ones that'll come up are going to be like largely based on UGC. That means that attracting content creators is going to be the lifeblood of those platforms. Can you talk a little bit about Rec Room's strategy for acquiring and retaining content creators competitive against other platforms?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is an exciting trajectory for Rec Room. Rec Room is built on the Unity engine, and within the last year, we've released Rec Room Studio, which is effectively a flavor of Unity Editor. So we are slowly but surely giving as much kind of Unity control to our creators as we can. In the near-ish future, we'll be introducing things like C#-based text scripting. So the capability of the platform is becoming a lot broader and deeper all the time, so that if you have existing skills as a professional developer, you should be able to plug and play into the platform very easily. And what we want to create is this great kind of spectrum of creation where you have early creators who are using the in-game tools to make interesting things, and sometimes they create hits as well, and then more staid kind of professional developers who can kind of enter through the other end of the funnel. And we really see the vision of the future is teams that are comprised of both of these types of creators, working together to create interesting new things.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Morgan, and thank you everybody for attending.
All right, thank you all. Really appreciate it.